Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for coming. We're going to get started. Welcome to our town hall. In solidarity with our communities, a call to action, SRJC Town Hall. Before we get started, I'd like to recognize a couple of people in the audience. I'd like to recognize Rebecca Hermasio from representing Mike Thompson's office, Congressman Mike Thompson. Rebecca, thank you for being here. And I'd also like to recognize two members of the Board of Trustees, Dorothy Battenfeld and Maggie Fishman, President of the Board of Trustees for the Sonoma Community College District. And now I would like to invite our esteemed President, Dr. Frank Chong, to come up and say a few words.
I'm nervous. First, they came for the communists, and I did not speak because I was not a communist. Then, they came for the socialist, and I did not speak because I was not a socialist. Then, they came for the trade unionist, and I did not speak because I was not a trade unionist. Then, they came for the Jews, and I did not speak because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Welcome. Today, we are here because we're not going to be silent. We are here because we are all in this room part of America. And community colleges started in 1901 at Joliet Junior College in Illinois. And community colleges are one of the most democratic institutions, not just in the United States, but in the world. It's an institution of higher education. It's open for all. And all is not exclusive or selective. All means open access. That means anybody who wants to come can come study at a junior college or a community college. And I've spoken to my board, I've spoken to faculty here and students, and it is our resolve as Santa Rosa Junior College is to maintain our access to the entire community. And when we begin to say all but certain people, all but this group or all but that group, then we are going on a very slippery slope. We're going to a place where I don't think anybody wants to go to or needs to go to. So I would say, as the president of Santa Rosa Junior College, I want to assure all the faculty, staff, students, and administrators, with the support of my board, that you are all not only tolerated here, no, not tolerated, but welcome and embraced. So thank you for your support. And what have we done since the elections? You know, what we've done is we've engaged in dialogue. We've done what institutions of higher education do. We teach, we listen, and we learn. We teach, we listen, and we learn. Our faculty have been taught to teach in a way that was open to all different types of viewpoints. Our students are known to be respectful and civil, even though you can be passionate, you know. And we learn from each other. I've learned from my academic senate, Eric Thompson, who's provided me with a resolution from the academic senate. I've learned from Catherine Mathis, who's our classified senate president. You know, I've learned from our AFA leadership, who's given me a resolution. I've learned from our union, classified union, who've given me their viewpoints. And on Tuesday, we will be bringing forward to the Board of Trustees a resolution reaffirming what I call a unity resolution that unifies all of the different components of what they have taught me about what they like to see in our values. It's already in our values that we celebrate diversity. It's already in our values that we're an open access institution. So I would say to you as students and as faculty is that we are working together with our governor, with our legislature. We're fortunate to have Congressman Thompson and Congressman Huffman who represent our voice in Washington, D.C. We also work with Senator Levine and Senator Mike McGuire, Assemblyman Levine, I'm sorry, and Mike McGuire on the state level in Sacramento to combat policies that we think are incongruent with our values. So we are working at the local level with our city council and county supervisors. I know our trustees, Trustee Battenfeld and Trustee Fishman, have been actively engaging in conversations with other elected officials. So the point I'm trying to make is democracy is not neat. It's not simple. It's not linear, you know? And the reason it is because so many voices need to be heard. And the purpose of the town hall today is for you to be heard and for us to gather a very qualified, eminent group of voices that have an opportunity, who want to share with you their thoughts, and they want to hear from the audience what you're thinking. And together we will find a solution to this challenge that we have. And I'll finally close with a quote, and I won't tell you who it's from first because I want to see if anybody knows. It says, "Government is not reason, it is not eloquence, it is force, like fire, a troublesome servant and a fearful master. Never for a moment should it be left to irresponsible action." Who do you think had that quote? If anybody can tell me correctly, I will buy them lunch. And you know how cheap I am. Anybody? Who? Jefferson? Close. I'll still buy you lunch. Go ahead. Kennedy? Okay. Washington. Who said that? All right. So I also want to recognize a group of very special students. You're all special students to me, but there's a group of students that come from developing countries that we host for a year. They come here from Indonesia, from Turkey, from different countries, Abidjan, from the Ivory Coast. They are here to study about America, and all of them have come here with open hearts and open minds, and they're very confused because they don't understand why all this stuff is going on. But they're here at my special invitation, and that's our CCRI students. Could you please stand up and be recognized? Thank you. And so finally, I would just ask that today we keep open minds and open hearts. And as the leader of this institution that's been around for 99 years, through the history of this college, we've dealt with segregation, we've dealt with wars, we've dealt with dissent. And as the country continues to evolve, I submit to you that this period that we're in now, today, will test our democracy to the fullest. But I have to believe in my heart that democracy is stronger than any individual. And so today's a great learning experience. It's really what Santa Rosa Junior College is about. And I want to, again, welcome you here on behalf of our college. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chung. Thank you for your leadership in this matter. So, we will proceed as follows. First of all, we'll have short speeches from our panelists, 7 of them. They will speak for about 6 minutes, give or take, each, and then that will be followed by questions and comments. And so you probably have been told as you came in here that we have cards. If you would like to ask a question or make a comment, you can fill out one of these cards, and there will be ambassadors, student ambassadors roaming around, and you can give one of those cards to a student ambassador. If you would like to ask a question, please write it very legibly on the card and give it to an ambassador, and we will read your questions. However, we will edit the questions or sift them For redundancy, if several people ask the same question, we'll only have one of those. And we will also not read your question if we can't read it, right? So write legibly, please. Also, you can choose on the card whether you want me to read the question or whether you want to come to the mic to read it yourself. If you check the box on the bottom of the card, I will read your question or your comment. If you would like to read your question or make your comment yourself, then I will call you by name to the mic. And we will do this in an orderly way, okay? That will follow our panel. I'll introduce our panel in just a moment. I would just like to echo what Dr. Chong said. We live in momentous times. Thomas Paine opened one of his essays with, "These are the times that try men's souls," right? He was gender exclusive back then, but we'll forgive him for that. And so I would just like you to think about, as you listen to our panelists and contemplate what you would like to contribute to the conversation, that we need all in these charged times where violence is in danger of breaking out, as we confront different points of view with passion on both sides. We want to have a civil discussion. This is a sacred house here, a public college. This is a sacred house of reasoned discourse. And we can disagree with each other, but we will do it civilly and with respect. And we will state our case with civility and respect. And just a couple of principles I would like to repeat. Along that line, let's speak to be understood and listen to understand. Someone in the philosophy department here has a sign on their door that says, "Too often people listen in order to respond rather than to understand." So let's not behave that way. Let's listen to each other deeply. Also challenge ideas rather than people. And please, let's all focus our attention up here and not have sidebar conversations. And let's pause for a moment and everyone turn their cell phones off or on silent, please. Everybody turn your devices on silent, because we're all in this together and we're all focused on a singular topic and concern, set of concerns. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to introduce our panelists briefly, and then I will invite each of them to share with us, and I will ask each of them a leading question. When it comes time for you to ask questions, please address your question to an individual if you would like, or if you don't do that, I will address questions to individual panelists, and we probably won't take the time for every panelist to answer any given question, but we'll try to be specific. Okay, so we have from my immediate left on down to the left on the panel, we have Dr. Mariana Martinez, who is the most recently elected member of the Board of Trustees for Santa Rosa Junior College. I think I can say the youngest member. I'll go ahead and say that, even though I'm actually not sure that's true. Oh, Jordan has you beat. Okay, so Dr. Mariana Martinez, who also is faculty at Sonoma State University in Chicano Studies. And to her left, we have Richard Coshnear, who is an immigration attorney with VIDAS. I will let him tell you what VIDAS stands for. Richard is the staff attorney for VIDAS Legal Services, a nonprofit which fights deportation and assists immigrants to obtain, where possible, lawful status in the U.S. VIDAS is located in downtown Santa Rosa. He offers, through the SRJC Dream Center, a free immigration law clinic one Friday afternoon per month. To his left, we have Karen Furukawa-Schlereth, who is our Vice President for Human Resources. To her left, we have Lorenzo Dueñas, who is our Chief of Police here at Santa Rosa Junior College. And then we have Rafael Vasquez, who is both a classified staff member working with EOPS, and he is also faculty. He teaches humanities and interdisciplinary studies. And finally, we have Sean Martin, who is faculty. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for correcting me. I was just skipping my page here. We have Maria Salcido. Maria Salcido is our student representative on the panel. A terrible oversight, forgive me, Maria. We very much welcome you and appreciate you being here. Maria Salcido is in student government here at SRJC. She is on the Student Government Association, she is the vice president for committees. And then finally, we have Sean Martin, who is full-time faculty in philosophy and also a specialist in peace studies. And so that's our panel, and we will start with Dr. Mariana Martinez, and you have about 6 minutes, and I have a timekeeper, Ian. Let me locate Ian. Where is Ian? There's Ian, right in the front. All right. So, Dr. Mariana Martinez, the Board of Trustees will consider next week a safe haven resolution. Dr. Chong mentioned it. Could you tell us about how this resolution came about, and what is the plan for moving forward, and how do you personally relate to this issue?
Hi, welcome. Thank you for having me here. So the way that the board went about this was on my first meeting in December, we did have our public comments, and we did have a long and extensive conversation, per se, with a lot of the folks on this campus. They did come up and share their concern because this was the first meeting that we did have right after the election. And they shared their concerns about making this a possible sanctuary campus, right? And so we did take this very seriously. We did not just say, okay, we listened and moved on. We actually listened, understood, and then actually looked for an actual solution. At the January meeting, both Trustee Maggie and Dorothy, both of them kind of, I think, more questions were posed about what would be a best resolution. I was not at that meeting because I was a little hurt. But following that, we actually did meet. We met with Dr. Chong, we met with other folks in student affairs, and we wanted, I think more than anything, answers of how can we proceed to ensure that we can tell all of you, we are listening, we are definitely on board, at least, in regards to protecting our students. And it wasn't just our student. Our discussion led to what about our students, our staff, and faculty. So we took it upon ourselves to really ask those questions and find somewhat of a solution, looking at the resolutions that were put forth by the Academic Senate, by the union, by students, right? So again, we are listening to all of the folks who make up this campus, but not just them, but also their families. We have to understand that we're not just talking about students, staff, and faculty that are on this campus. We do also have, they might be or belong to mixed status families, right, in that category. And when we're talking about also a safe haven, we're talking about inclusiveness. Unfortunately, our administration is doing a lot of attacks, not just on undocumented communities. There's other attacks on other communities. And so for us, it is a responsibility to protect, provide a safe space for all of the folks that come onto this campus. With that also said, the way that we are trying to look at the resolution is also kind of what are the steps that need to be taken in case X, Y, and Z occurs. And obviously, this is why we have different agents on the panel as well. And so those are the things kind of like we had to think about. One of the things that's somewhat unique about Dorothy, Maggie, and myself is that we're also educators. So on an individual level, it isn't about a moral, protecting these students or staff or faculty, but it's also something that we do. We might not necessarily take an oath like a doctor and so on, but it is our responsibility to protect all of their students. And unlike, Dorothy and Maggie, who work with K through 12 students, I work with higher ed students, and they are considered adults. But it is still my responsibility to protect them and educate them. And so on an individual level, it's coming into that perspective, right? I work at a higher ed institution. I have students who are undocumented, but I also have students who are Muslim. I have students who are Asian American. I have students who are very diverse. And so when we're talking about safe haven, protecting, it isn't just because, oh, it's the morally thing to do, but it's also because it's something that I went into education to do. And I can tell you that when I say also about their families, that's really critical. I think that's one of the things that we are not necessarily always thinking about, because if we have students who are US citizens, they are quote unquote okay, what about their families? They're carrying also that weight. And I think that's part of what, when we are creating or forming or thinking about these resolutions, we also have to think about that. We have to think about the emotional, the mental, the spiritual self of the people that we are trying to work with. So in a very individual, personal level, it has been a lot of work, a lot of educating not myself, but other peers around me in terms of what does it mean to really protect all students, all staff, all faculty, or just communities. And what does that mean within the law? What does that mean within higher education? But also, what does it mean? What are the consequences, right? If I have a student and ICE comes and they're in my office, what are the consequences if I say I'm going to protect this student? And those are questions that we are asking. Those are questions that are very important to us as a board and individually. So there is plenty of work that we're doing, but I think the overall message as a board, we're trying to make sure that you know that we are listening and we are going to move forward with some form of resolution, and it is based also on all of you, not just necessarily what we are, seeing ourselves, but also from Santa Rosa Junior College, but also the community in Sonoma County.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, Richard, how does constitutional law relate to immigration status?
This is a fun one. I was told I should spell out VIDAS for you. That's Vital Immigrant Defense Advocacy and Services. That's our nonprofit here in Santa Rosa. And most of the work that I do is not as fun as the constitutional law questions. This is the more sexy stuff. And so set up this question. You could do a whole course on the relationship between the Constitution and immigrant status. There are questions like, the Constitution sets up the relationship between the powers, the separation of powers. How much power does the president have over deportations and immigration status? How much does the Congress have? How much does the judiciary have? There are the federalist questions. How much does the federal government have versus the states? Do the states have anything to say about immigration? What is Sacramento doing right now, and can they do it to protect California residents from the threats from Washington? But I'd like to focus in on a particular part of the Constitution, the Fourth Amendment, part of those first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights. There are, as I say, lots of other interesting things to talk about here, but the Fourth Amendment, you may remember, is the one that protects us against unreasonable searches and seizures. It's the one that protects us against unwarranted arrests or the searches of our persons, our cars, our homes. And you may have heard at a rumor kind of level that undocumented people in the United States don't have constitutional rights. There are no protections vis-a-vis the police of the sort that we citizens all count on, that searches have to be reasonable, arrests have to be reasonable. So I'd like to tell you a story and illustrate the points I want to make through that. I'd like to tell you the story of a young man named Francisco. And the story does go back 10 and a half years to 2006, but the essence of it hasn't really changed. It's still pertinent. Francisco was meeting a friend and going up to what was then the Wells Fargo, is now back to the Luther Burbank Center, to hear a comedian that night. So they hopped in the car, his friend was driving, and they went over to West 9th Street here in Santa Rosa to pick up Francisco's girlfriend. And as they were driving into the complex, the apartment complex, they noticed that there were a lot of police around. But they went in, and they picked up the girlfriend, and as they started to drive out, they got flagged over by this group of police. And they noticed early on that the police were a mixed group. There were people from the Sheriff's Department, people from the Highway Patrol, and people from Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. So it was a joint operation. And when they got flagged over, the driver was asked for his license, and maybe something was said about the reason for the pullover. But pretty quickly, they focused on Francisco in the passenger seat. And they had him get out of the car, and then pat searched him, and then made a deeper search. As you read in Fourth Amendment law, a pat search requires a certain amount of suspicion about armed and dangerous, and then a deeper search requires a greater degree of suspicion about criminality. So they did a deeper search, and they pulled his wallet out of his pocket and discovered a card in there that indicated that he was from Mexico. So they pulled him over, asked him some more questions, and then put him in a vehicle to be taken to the Sonoma County Jail. He had not committed any crime, but he was taken to the jail and held there for 4 nights. I think it was a Thursday night, so Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It was either Monday or Tuesday when ICE came and picked him up, took him down to San Francisco, and set a bond for his release, and he was then put into deportation proceedings. Family paid the bond, and they came to us, and we started to explore what kind of defenses we had for Francisco. We brought what's called a motion to suppress evidence. This is often done in criminal court, not very often done in immigration court, but the motion is based on the idea that everyone should be free from an unreasonable search and seizure, and if evidence was derived as a result of an unreasonable search or seizure, that evidence ought not to be admitted in court against the person. Well, in immigration court, the first thing that has to be proven, 60 seconds, oh my goodness, I better get to the point. The first thing that has to be proven is that the person is from another country. So that card they found in his wallet was key evidence, but it was obtained by a search that was not itself grounded in any reasonable suspicion of any criminal activity. So we were able to convince the judge, the Highway Patrol, the Sheriff's Department, and the ICE officer all got up on the stand and testified. Our witnesses got on the stand and testified. And the judge did not believe the police because their stories didn't match up, even with each other's stories. They were all different. So the judge suppressed the evidence, and Francisco's case got terminated. I guess I'll have to carry on in the question and answer period because I'm running out of time. But basically, I wanted to illustrate the point that you have the right to remain silent. You have the right to not be searched unless the police or the law enforcement agency has some grounds for belief that you committed some criminal activity. And keep track of this as you have contacts with law enforcement because you may be able to overturn a prosecution or a deportation based on that kind of thing. So you do have rights, you do have constitutional rights, and we have to work to sustain them, protect them. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Richard. And that's really good information, and we will have a chance more later to explore these things. So thank you. Karen.
Thank you so much.
So I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
What is the college doing to protect students and employees and to provide a safe learning and working environment?
Thank you, Eric, and I'm really pleased to be here today. Thank you for all of you for showing up. It's a very critical conversation. I've been here at Santa Rosa Junior College for 20 years, starting my 21st year actually this month. And there really has been changes that have occurred that are in the law, are in our policies, and are in our procedures here, even at the college. One of the things that I feel very proud about is that this college is committed to an inclusive learning and working environment that is free from all forms of unlawful discrimination, including sex and gender-based harassment and sexual misconduct. And what have we done to protect students and employees and to provide a safe and learning and working environment? We've adopted policies and procedures that indicate that unlawful discrimination, sexual harassment, sexual misconduct, and bullying are unlawful. These policies do cover students, employees, and members of the public. The college has a well-defined process for receiving complaints and for investigating these complaints. The outcome of the investigation may lead to what we call interim remedies for students, such as changing classes, being able to do other accommodations so that students who make complaints do not have to face perpetrators, up to and including the expulsion of students or the dismissal of employees who have been found to have unlawfully discriminated, harassed, or bullied students or other employees at the conclusion of an investigation. We have committed resources to create and to hire a full-time management position, known today as the Manager of Training and Compliance, whose major responsibility is to receive, investigate, and respond to allegations of unlawful discrimination, harassment, sexual misconduct, and bullying. We've also created a new website known as our Title IX and Gender Equity website, which was launched in October of 2016. And this comprehensive website that is on our webpage serves as an information center with resources and provides a new online reporting mechanism to report gender-based discrimination and sexual misconduct. Last year, we also purchased and implemented a software program known as Maxient that centralizes reporting and now allows students, employees, and third parties to report incidents of bullying, discrimination, and harassment easily online. Finally, I think we have had some very affirmative efforts in terms of training to our employees and to our students, hopefully, that allows us to have conversations through professional development days and throughout the year. And some of the examples that we have had regarding this kind of training include topics such as developing and promoting cultural competency, embracing a culture of inclusion, preventing sexual harassment. We've had fireside chats with Dr. Chong and leaders of the college and the Academic Senate and the Classified Senate. We'll have one in February to talk about the topics of civility and how to have respectful discourse. We've had a crucial conversation, discussion, and training, helping employees who have difficult conversations to have with each other and with students to do it in a respectful and civil way. So in conclusion, I do think we've done a lot at this college through policy, through procedure, through formal training, to be able to ensure, again, that our students and our employees work in an inclusive and a safe environment. And I'm very proud of this college in terms of its efforts and also about the values that we have, which have been adopted by our board, that really allows us to support all students in their pursuit of academic success and excellence. I will be here today. I have my business cards at the table, so in case you'd like to ask any additional questions, even at the conclusion of this, for topics that I've not been able to reach today at this very short presentation, I do have business cards, and I will also be here throughout and even after this town hall meeting if I can be of any help and assistance. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Karen. I want to call people's attention, if you didn't notice it before, the back of our card, our program card, has a list of resources. So Karen mentioned being available as a resource. There's a whole list of resources for various subtopics that we're talking about. And so avail yourselves of that. Thank you. Okay, Lorenzo. The resolution, the board resolution states that SRJC District Police shall not detain, question, or arrest any individuals solely on the basis of suspected or known undocumented immigration status. How will District Police uphold this part of the resolution?
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for having me today, and I just want to let you know that the District Police here patrols all of the campuses, including Petaluma, Schoen Farm, Southwest, the training center in Windsor. And our goal here is to do everything we can to make sure everybody's safe and secure within all those campuses, including staff, students, community that comes here passing through. I mean, this is an open campus, so we have a lot of people coming and going, and that's our main concern. We represent everybody. I want to make that very clear. I don't want people to think that somebody gets special treatment or somebody is targeted. We represent everybody equally, regardless of race, religion, sex, sexual orientation. It doesn't matter. Right now, we're going through a lot of uncertain times, and I know there's a lot of fear and confusion. And that confusion and fear brings up the questions of what if? What if this happens and what if that happens? So to Eric's question is, I don't want to talk about what ifs, I want to talk about what is, and I'll tell you what our policy is related to immigration. I have one of our policies here from our Chiefs Association, and we're all on the same page in the entire county. So this applies to the county because all the chiefs and the sheriff have met, and this has been in place since 1999. It was revised in 2005, and it was revised again in 2011. And the immigration policy basically says, Sonoma County law enforcement personnel shall not arrest or detain persons based solely on immigration entry. We shall not undertake any interrogation of any person for the sole purpose of ascertaining his or her immigration status. We shall not undertake a law enforcement action designed solely to detect the presence of illegal immigrants. Sonoma County law enforcement personnel will assist federal government if there's a violent felony involved, which I think a lot of you would appreciate that if we had a murderer, a rapist, a kidnapper, and that's the only time that we would consider that. And of course, it would go under high scrutiny, and I would be the person to say yay or nay. And you can rest assured that I'll weigh those options if it's valuable and if it falls within this policy. Another thing I want to talk about is in relation to free speech related to all of this. I think you should know that we encourage you to speak and to have your say. And as Dr. Chong mentioned, this is a very democratic society and community here at the campus, and we embrace that. We embrace that for both sides, every side, but we hope that everybody can do that peacefully, respectfully, and then allow everybody to have an equal voice, just like we would want, just like from one side would want their side and the other side would want their side, but we just want to make sure everybody's safe and respectful and peaceful. I think the strongest tool for all of us is education, and to continue to ask what ifs and what happens, and to question each other and to have this discourse. It's rich, it's important, and I think it creates avenues for answers and questions. Sometimes we won't have an answer. The answer will be the question. And for me, that's something that I embrace as well. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, obviously I'll get it on the next round. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Lorenzo. And so, Rafael, what is SRJC doing now to support our undocumented students and employees?
Thank you for the question. I think it's important that we have dialogues like this, and that this type of dialogues happen on a more regular basis. I think that some of the many things that we have seen, I think it's important for us to recognize that in 2012, President Obama, when he did the State of the Union address, he stated that by that by then we were already short 2 million workers in the United States. And then Georgetown University provided a new piece of research in 2013, and they said by 2018 we were going to be short 3 million workers in the United States for jobs that require at least 2 years of college or more. The Public Policy Institute of California released a study in 2011 that said that just in California, by 2025, we're going to be short 1 million workers. They, again, did the research, and in October 6 of 2015, they released a new statement that says that we are now looking at a 1.5 million worker shortage. which means for anybody who's wondering why are we allowing undocumented students to come to Santa Rosa Junior College or any of the public institutions in the state of California, the answer is we need them more than they need us, which means without them, right, companies are going out of business. This is why Facebook and all these other companies are now going against the President of the United States, because they need all these workers to come and work in their computers, and we don't have enough visas for those individuals. And so these students, many of them came to this country, students that I work with on a regular basis, they came to this country at the age of 3 months, 6 months. The youngest was 2 weeks old when she came to this country. They know no other country than this country. They don't speak the language the same way that is spoken in their original country or country where they come from. And as a result of that, all they want to do is contribute to the other country that they know as their home. And so what are we doing at Santa Rosa Junior College? We have instituted a Dream Center. At this moment, the Dream Center is more like a stop-and-go situation, because we have been working towards creating something that is respectful and that provides an environment that is confidential for students and anybody who comes and visits. Unfortunately, we had 2 situations during the period of the elections where individuals came over and started chanting Trump, and started chanting that, or one individual, for example, said that he knew that the employees at the Dream Center were all, quote unquote, illegals, and then walked away. And so we need, obviously, more of a center, a private space where students can receive services not just from my office, but also from my colleague, the attorney, who comes over and provides 2 hours of free legal services every week. But what we are doing now is we are doing DACA, which is work permits from that were instituted under President Obama, which now Trump is trying to eliminate. We do DACA renewals, which is every 2 years we have to renew that work permit at a cost of $495 to the students. We do advanced paroles, although right now it's on hold. And those are the permits that allow, under certain circumstances, for individuals who have the work permit to be able to leave the United States and come back legally. And so we provide those services. Then we provide services in assisting students how to enter Santa Rosa Junior College, financial assistance, scholarships, and often, and this is why unfortunately we need a little bit more space, is we need that confidential space when these individuals are overwhelmed, they are being harassed or bullied at their jobs, or they are being harassed or bullied out there in the community. And so those are some of the services that we provide in collaboration with the MECHA organization, in collaboration with the Undocumented Student Union, which is a club on campus for undocumented students and allies, and in collaboration with Mujeres Chingonas, which is another club on campus that collaborates with us and other allies. We do Know Your Rights trainings, and we have been doing those now here at Santa Rosa Junior College for 4 years. This week and the next few weeks, we'll be doing them almost every day, sometimes twice a day. We want to educate everybody, not just undocumented students, but the allies that work with them. We do immigration clinics. So on February 25th, we're going to have our next immigration clinic here on campus from 8 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon, where we bring volunteer lawyers who will meet one-on-one with individuals who may qualify for legal status in the United States. And then we go and do community presentations about Know Your Rights throughout the county of Sonoma, Napa, Mendocino, and we'll go as far as we can go. So this afternoon, as soon as I'm done with this presentation, I'll take about a 5-minute break. I have an interview, and after that, I have to go do another presentation in our community, and it doesn't matter how many people show up, as long as one more person walks away safely from an interaction with immigration, we're happy. On Sunday, immigration was visiting Hillsburg, and as a result of that, as a result of a training that one of our students went through, That individual knew exactly what to do, and he's still a student at Santa Rosa Junior College. But we need to do more as a community college to provide a safe environment, because what is happening now is we're seeing a drop in undocumented students at Santa Rosa Junior College, which ultimately is going to cost Santa Rosa Junior College money, because the 600 plus undocumented students that I work with on a daily basis bring to Santa Rosa Junior College an income of close to $4 million a year. They are gone, then we're going to have to let go some individuals. And so the last group that I'll mention that we collaborate with is Dr. Maria Hess in Humanidad, which is the psychologist in this community that really understand the challenges that undocumented students and their families are going through. And so we refer a lot of students there, another nonprofit organization that is going above and beyond and really doing a lot of work with our community. And so there's a lot of collaboration. We are now reconnecting with KBBF Bilingual Radio, and every Thursday I will be there from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., and we'll start doing trainings on the radio and online to educate more individuals. The last thing I'll say is this. If we don't stand up for undocumented students now, what Dr. Chong said at the beginning is exactly what's going to happen. They came for the undocumented students, and I wasn't willing to stand up for them. When they come for us and Roe v. Wade, who's going to be there for you, right? So it's important that we think about this stuff. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Raf. Thank you. And Maria, tell us about a student's perspective.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maria Salcido. I am going to speak about conversations and things that I've heard in classrooms and things that I've sat in and heard in classrooms and had conversations with students afterwards or prior to their classes. I've heard students be concerned on how the junior college, they're hearing about the policies that they're wanting to implement, but how they're going to carry out those policies. I know that there is a resolution being presented to the board. There's actually several resolutions being presented to the board this coming meeting. It's next Tuesday. So they're wondering how those resolutions are going to be implemented and set out. And there has also been instances where students feel that their voices are silenced or left out when they feel that they have the need or want to speak. But per se, there has been chances where Trump is mentioned in the classroom, and there has been silence and nobody wanting to speak about it. And these being the opportunities that the student may have to voice the needs or resources that they might want to acquire or they feel that they need at the college, they feel that they're silenced. Another thing is that students are wondering how their education is going to be stopped. Are they going to continue to be able to come to the Santa Rosa Junior College, and how the college is going to be able to support them with the policies that might be implemented during this presidency. Students sometimes feel that, on the other hand, when they feel silent, sometimes they feel that they shouldn't speak because they might be asking for too much. They feel that beforehand they might have spoke up, but people have shut them down by saying that, you know what, that you've been talking about that issue a little bit too much, so now it's time to move on and focus on a different issue. I'm going to put an example. I'm in student government. I'm an undocumented individual. I have advocated for undocumented issues beforehand, and I have been told that I talk about undocumented issues a little bit too much and should move on to a different issue. I've also been approached and told that I talk about women's issues too much and talk about a different issue. Now, there is something that I like to call collaboration, and I am more than happy to collaborate with people on different issues, because my struggle is not just about me, it's about all of us, and your struggle is not just about you, it's about all of us. It's working in a collective manner so that we can get our communities together and strive forward. So those are a little bit of the issues that I've heard in students inside of the classroom, outside of the classroom. And one that was very important and impactful was about labeling. I spoke with a student outside, actually right outside here, and we were talking about how the presidency has affected them and the labels that were set out about certain groups. And what they say about certain groups and how people begin to define that person with those labels and see them as is instead of seeing them as a whole individual who is not just that label but is as complex as they themselves may be. So there are issues at the table, there are resources that need to be continued, even though they might be here now, they need to be expanded to those students who might not feel that they are being represented at the college. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria. And finally, Sean Martin. Sean, put this into perspective for us from the point of view of faculty and, in the larger context of this historical moment for higher education.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank everybody who participated in organizing this event. I think it's a wonderful opportunity, and also thank you to my panelists up here on the stage. My students will tell you I'm accustomed to usually a more informal and dialogical approach in my classes. Today, given the seriousness of the topic, I chose to write down my thoughts, so forgive me. I'm going to read from my paper here. So any student of modern history will easily recognize the basic tools of authoritarian regimes: the delegitimization of independent institutions of knowledge, the rejection of disciplined reason as an arbiter of truth, the demonization and intimidation of critical intellectuals, the exploitation of fear and insecurity in an injured population, and perhaps most relevant to our discussion today, the divisive characterization of empathy as weakness and the scapegoating of vulnerable populations for cynical and self-interested political gain. History also tells us that when a people hesitate to stand up and unequivocally demand respect for truth and human decency, along with those social institutions necessary to maintain them, that no law or custom, no wealth, no lofty document or expression of universal rights will provide adequate defense against the ravages of a determined autocrat. The principal lesson of history is that all power depends on some combination of obedience and indifference. No individual, however impressive, can impose policy on their own, but instead depends on the active participation of numerous persons to carry out their will. In a society premised on the fundamental principle that legitimate authority is contingent on the consent of the governed, the principal tool of resistance must be disciplined and unified disobedience grounded in a commitment to truth and equal rights. A community divided by mutual distrust and enmity, mired in misinformation and fallacy, and transfixed by false promises and oversimplified solution is easy prey for an autocrat. As Justice Souter, paraphrasing Benjamin Franklin, so eloquently put it, an ignorant people can never remain a free people. With this in mind, I think it's appropriate to pause for a moment to reflect on the role our educational institutions in general, and SRJC in particular, play in supporting the need for an informed public discourse. Our system of public education is grounded in the recognition that effective participation in the democratic political process depends on an educated and skeptical public, one that respects standards of evidence and is capable of distinguishing truth from deception. This depends on a sharp distinction between reason, conviction, and ideology. How do we distinguish between the two? The simple answer pertains to the relation of evidence to conclusions. Those who are engaged in reasoned inquiry will base their conclusions on the available evidence. Such people will seek out and welcome relevant evidence and will adjust or abandon their views when the evidence so demands. Ideologues, to the contrary, begin with conclusions and then accept only that evidence which confirms their convictions, while rejecting any evidence that would challenge them. It is this sort of monstrous certainty, what Plato referred to as the conceit of knowledge, that we face. Whether the strategy involves intimidating journalists, disparaging jurists, censoring scientists, bullying independent critics, or simply inventing alternative facts, ideology, especially in the hands of a powerful individual, is antithetical to reasoned inquiry and a threat to the public trust. Excuse me. Again, history, from the persecutions of Socrates and Galileo to McCarthyism, shows that the reasoned pursuit of knowledge can only thrive when scholars and students alike are at liberty to challenge the conventional wisdom, even when doing so inspires popular offense. The pursuit of knowledge is the first imperative of any educational institution. Since this aim is often at odds with the interest of the powerful, scholarship depends on social recognition of the principle of academic freedom. All progress, whether in the arts, sciences, or public affairs, is contingent on the adherence to this principle. Our culture's, albeit fragile, recognition of this has made the American system of colleges and universities the envy of the world. At SRJC, this amounts to the following. All faculty members shall be free to pursue instruction, grading, scholarship, policy discussions, and public discourse in an environment free of intimidation and censorship. The merit of academic ideas, theories, arguments, and views shall be measured solely against the standards of the relevant academic and professional disciplines. With the exercise of academic freedom come corresponding responsibilities. On this view, discipline expertise is grounded in the notion that knowledge is not relative to or otherwise dependent on particular persons, however esteemed, but instead depends on the learning community, often represented by professional organizations, committed to the standards and methods of their discipline. Open-mindedness, accuracy, logical correctness, and peer review are examples of standards which collectively fall under the broad category of critical thinking. The second imperative of an educational institution is to foster critical thinking and prepare students to participate in this community of learning and responsibly exercise their civic responsibilities. My duty as a faculty member is to equip students to effectively engage in the standards, methods, and concepts pertinent to my discipline. To this end, I should, to the best of my ability, inspire dispositions of open-mindedness, humility, tolerance, intellectual courage, and independent thinking. I have a duty to challenge students' pre-existing beliefs, to disabuse them of the notion that education is a consumer good, subject to the policy that the customer is always right. If students are not, from time to time, made uncomfortable in their certainty, I'm not doing my job. In short, my duty is to provide students with the resources they require to achieve self-understanding and prepare them for meaningful engagement with the community. In the words of Bertrand Russell, I'm a philosopher, gotta quote some philosophers, education enlarges the person beyond themselves, allows participation in the universe of ideas in the human community across history and space. This has the effect of enlarging one's moral community, perceiving those who were previously the other as having worth and deserving respect. This brings us to the third imperative, which pertains to education as a public good. SRJC has a mission to foster community by, among other things, supporting social equity and civil engagement. The one aim of the college is to help individual students fulfill their potential and improve their personal circumstances. The underlying motive for a public institution of learning is to develop the conditions necessary to support our highest social aspirations. And in this sense, reason is an alternative to violence. The values of tolerance, diversity, and equal opportunity certainly do reflect compassion for the underrepresented, but it is important to note that these values are not grounded in mere altruism or generosity toward the underprivileged, but are essential to our mission. When bigotry and fear, stereotypes and demonization threaten to divide the community, it is the duty of institutions like SRJC to resist and offer a welcoming home to all our community who are serious about the pursuit of knowledge. And I'll close with some words with the CSU Chancellor, Timothy White, that he recently offered. We know that a person's intelligence, their capacity for learning and advancing human progress in no way depends on what side of the border that they were born on. We know that an empowered person does not take opportunity from others, they create opportunity for those who surround them. And it's my view that the resolution before the board and the actions taken by this panel are an important, albeit modest, step in the direction of meeting these imperatives as a public institution of higher learning. Thanks for the time. Great.
I'd like to thank the panel for each and every one of them giving us really good material and staying pretty much, more or less, to the time. Thank you. It's all good stuff. Now, we're going to, we can go ahead and clap one more time. Thank you, panel. It's very good. So we have some questions coming in, and I have some questions that I'm going to read, and I will aim them at specific panelists. And I'll just say this. I'm going to kind of gauge how many comments and questions we have from the audience, and I'll give you either 1 minute or 2 minute time limit, depending on how many there are. So we'll start with a 2 minute time limit. Ian will keep track, and so if you want to make a public comment, I'll give you 2 minutes, and I reserve the right to reduce that to 1 minute if we have a lot of comments. Okay, so the first question, this is a question for Lorenzo. And the question is, the Sonoma County Sheriff just met with Mr. Sessions, stating that he agrees with Mr. Sessions and Mr. Trump's plan for deportation. What will SRJC PD collaboration look like with the sheriff if the sheriff agrees with the administration's plan?
Thank you for the question. I don't know what the discussions were with Mr. Sessions and Sheriff Freitas. I'm sure that we'll get together afterwards and determine what was talked about. It sounded like they were talking about what ifs as well. And the collaboration is going to be, obviously he's the sheriff of the county, and we're one of the local jurisdictions within this area, and we'll have a roundtable discussion as well as the chiefs to discuss what was discussed, because once we get the information, then we'll ask them where that went, what it meant, and what it means to us. And so our voice would be heard if we're in opposition or if we're in agreement. I mean, I don't know what was said. I think that's an assumption to say that he agrees with him or not agrees. I don't know what was said, so I don't want to pretend that he said, yes, I agree with him or not. So I'll wait to hear from him, and I'd be happy to report back. It's public information, and like I said, our policy stands, and it will stand, and that's where we're at right now. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next question comes from Petaluma, and it's an anonymous question, but I gather it's from a student from Petaluma. And so I'll direct this question to Sean and Mariana. And I'll also say that any panelist that really wants to speak to a question, feel free to indicate that you do. So the question is, how will we, students, know we'll be safe in the classroom? What will instructors do in classrooms to keep undocumented students from feeling discriminated against? So, Sean, you want to start with that?
Well, I mean, I can't speak for all faculty. I think some of what I just said about academic freedom does allow some differences to occur. Although, in my own personal case, I take great care to ensure that every single student is offered an opportunity to speak their mind freely and openly, so long as it is not abusive or attacking other students or otherwise disruptive of the educational purposes of the class. I will hold in confidence any information or I make myself available to students to express their concerns about the class. And on occasion, students do avail themselves of that opportunity, and I hold that information dearly in confidence. And then I also direct them to the best of my ability to the resources, the services, some of my colleagues on campus that are able to offer assistance in those regards. In any case, I do my darndest to ensure that they are treated with the dignity and respect that every single student deserves in this campus. So.
All right,
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think so. Dr. Martinez, do you want to add to that?
On the proposed resolution that's coming forth, it actually, in one of the solutions or one of the points of it is that the faculty should not report students. And so as a board, we will work with Dr. Chung and our and his staff to ensure that those are things that are happening. But again, with Karen, the students have the opportunity to also report. So it's not necessarily, they don't have to per se wait or anything like that, because in the website, from the webpage, they can do it anonymously, and they could also do it, obviously, if they want to follow up and things like that. And I believe there is some form of communication with the faculty in terms of that. But when we look at just in general in higher education, there are policies within higher education, both the community college and CSU, that kind of gives you steps of what if discrimination, et cetera, outing students that could fall under discrimination, what they will be taken down as, right? Like the steps of what happens next. And I know obviously the president of the university as well as human resources would be the main folks to actually address it, as well as actually our new vice president. So it is an administrative steps that will need to be taken.
Okay, great. Thank you. I have a couple questions from people who did not check the box, so I'm going to call you up. If you meant to check the box, you can tell me to go ahead and read your question. But the idea is that if you didn't check the box, then you're going to come to a mic. One of these mics, there's one right there, and there's one over there. So first, Mahmoud Hamad, you want to go ahead and go to the mic and ask your question?
Hi everyone, my name is Mahmoud. I'm an international student here. I'm studying business management, entrepreneurship. My question, I'm gonna just start like 15 seconds. As a result of the last elections in the United States, there is like misjudgment or misunderstanding for me as a Muslim. So what's the procedures or what's the process the JC take to like conflict or clarify the misunderstanding between Islam or the terrorists? Because, you know, the President of the United States accused all of the Muslims as terrorists more than one time. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. All right. Who would like to take that one? Let's see. How about the faculty again? I have a couple questions in queue for a couple of you. Sean, you want to take that one?
So I do suffer from a mild hearing disorder, and I wasn't able to capture the essence of the question. I apologize.
Okay,
could you repeat?
I'm sorry. I also agreed. I promised the interpreters that I would repeat the question, and I failed. I will repeat the question. The essence of the question is that as a result of the, I'll read it, the Mahmoud wrote the question down. As a result of the change in administration, I feel that my status as a practicing Muslim is making some people confuse my faith with terrorist activities. What is the JC prepared to do in order to stop this unfair relationship?
Yeah. So this is precisely the sort of misinformation and blurring of reality that is the stuff of bigotry and discrimination generally. I think that the best tool I have as a faculty member is to make clear the reality of these distinctions. There's absolutely no evidence whatsoever that there's any relationship with someone's Muslim faith and their propensity towards violence or terrorism. I think this is a message that is, you know, some folks are attempting very diligently to impose on our society, but it's just downright misguided. As a child of immigrants from regions in Basque and on my dad's side and Ireland on my mother's side, there was a time not too long ago when I would have been presumed to have links with terrorism, whether it be in the Basque region again or with the IRA. And the idea that somehow my Irish identity or my Basque identity somehow makes me a threat to my fellow citizens is patently absurd and easily defied by a closer examination of the facts. So this is the sort of thing we as educators and as an institution, I think, are very well equipped to point out just the underlying falseness and then to confront that misinformation at every possible turn as vociferously as we possibly can.
Right.
That's
Okay,
what I have to say about
Karen?
that issue.
Yeah.
Thank you. I also wanted to go back and just again, as the overarching reminder, that this college is again committed to students and employees to not have discrimination. And as such, all of our programs, our activities, our classes, any other district activity that any student wants to participate in is covered by non-discrimination. So that protects characteristics of religion, national origin, creed, age, gender, etc. That non-discrimination statement appears on our website. It also appears on every public document that comes out of this institution, along with the ability to know that if you feel that you have had a situation that amounts to alleged discrimination, there is a way to report it. And as Dr. Martinez has said, and Sean has said, we take these complaints seriously, we investigate, we come up with outcomes, and the appropriate sanctions are taken if it is found that that discrimination has occurred. So again, it's just to be understanding that your rights are protected here, and what to do about that if you feel you have been a victim of discrimination. Report it to Student Services. Their numbers are listed on the contact card. There's a process for that. It's also reported in Human Resources. And again, my business card as the Vice President of Human Resources is at your table. So, thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Lorenzo?
Hi, Eric. Yeah, I just wanted to touch on that. I agree, Sean, challenging reporting, but I also think educating is very important. And to your question, I think education, cultural competency education is so valuable for staff, for students, for faculty, for everybody. I think once you understand what it feels like to be discriminated against, once you know what it's like to be marginalized, you'll understand from their perspective, and cultural competency awareness and training is something we may want to look at in the future that you could take online, or that there can be a class for everybody to partake in. I think when you educate somebody about what it's like to be, the question you said is, how I feel this way, and I'm sorry you feel that way, and hopefully we can come to a point where we understand each other's culture better, so we don't have these implicit biases where we go in and say, oh, there are persons like that because of this. And so I just want to throw that out there. I think education is extremely important, and who best to do that than an educational institute. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. All right. Here's a question for Richard. I heard a member of the Trump administration state that first-time immigrants are not protected by our Constitution, and that we are therefore not violating their rights. Could you address this?
It's contradicted by lots of decisions by our Supreme Court and many of the other courts. Immigrants are protected. There was a decision by the Supreme Court back in the Rehnquist days that raised the question whether immigrants might not have protections under the Bill of Rights, under the Constitution, but didn't settle it. And before and since that decision, it's been assumed in lots of other court decisions that immigrants do have the constitutional rights. When you read through the Constitution, you see that some sections talk about persons. So the 14th Amendment, for example, no person shall be denied denied life, liberty, or freedom without life, liberty, or property, without due process of the law. No person shall be denied equal protection of the law. Person has been held by the Supreme Court and lots of the other courts to include everyone who's here in the United States. You don't have to have any citizenship status to qualify for that. Some of the other amendments refer to the people, and some conservative theorists of the law say, well, maybe immigrants who are here haven't been here very long, I guess that's what they must have meant by first-time immigrants, are not yet incorporated into the people in the sense of the Constitution. But that's never actually been decided in any case, and at this point, I believe that we can confidently say that all of the amendments of the Constitution apply to all of the people, regardless of immigration status.
Okay, great. Thank you. So here's a question, and I'm going to call the questioner to the mic. Abel Fernando Vallejo Galindo.
Hola, buenas tardes a todos y a todas. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. As Eric said, my name is Abel Fernando Vallejo Galindo, and I want to start off by thanking, les quiero dar gracias a todos los farm workers, los que trabajan en el campo, our kitchen workers, and those in prison to do what they do so our economy and our society runs the way it does. My questions are, and I want to say that before I ask the questions that I'm here representing the undocumented community and undocumented students. The first question is, I sit in a position where I'm able to have conversations with administration, faculty, staff, and students here at Santa Rosa Junior College, and have started a dialogue that pertains to undocumented students. And the question that we have is, where does the college stand in the development of relocating our Dream Center, given its vulnerability in its location and the hate speech that has occurred at the Dream Center? That's the first question. And then the second question is, will SRJC work towards finding or hiring a full-time director at the Dream Center so that undocumented students can, or this full-time director can seek external resources for undocumented students, and at the same time, will they hire, or will they look for a space where people can practice their religion without any fear?
Thank you. That's a big question. Maybe that's aimed at administration. Dr. Martinez, do you want to address that? It's kind of unfair. You're so new to the board, but
yes, and well, it's yes and no. I think that is something that, as a board, we definitely need to discuss, because it is part of the conversation when we're talking about safe havens. And so I think that is one of the things that we need to address. I believe that that's also part of conversation, not just within our campus, but as a whole. On a very, I don't want to say a very different note, but one of the things that the UC system was fortunate enough is that they did have the external funds. So I think that I do agree with you in terms of needing all of these things. Again, it is my role and my responsibility as part of the board to bring it to the board as a possible way of, again, looking at how the safe haven resolution actually gets, what it would look like on the ground level, not just, in a piece of paper. So individually, that I think it's a responsibility that I do have within the board and to start that conversation. But I can tell you that I know that our president and his administration are 100% behind it. I think it's just looking at the options, or how are we going to go about doing that. But like I said, I think the commitment is there. Especially, again, we did have board members who came together and said we need to do this as the resolution, but also why we're doing that, and we also know what that also entails. This is just the beginning, but it's not the end work that we have at the table right now.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go to Petaluma now, and then we're going to have a couple of comments from the floor. So from Petaluma, what will you do to decrease racial tension not only on campus but off campus as well? Who would like to take that? Rafael?
I shall now solve everybody's problems. One of the things that we are doing, again, here at Santa Rosa Junior College is doing our best to educate people about their rights and their responsibilities. So at the end, I know Petaluma, you don't have it over there, but in Santa Rosa, I brought 300 of this. And these are signs that we train people on what to do if immigration, for example, shows up at your door. We also do trainings on what to do when you come in contact with the police department. What are your rights? What are your responsibilities? So we are doing this type of training to create community and create collaboration. The more you come to this type of trainings, the more you can express your views in a respectful manner. I myself, like Sean here, I have students who disagree on my views in my Latin America and the Caribbean class. Some of the students disagree completely on my views about immigration. I dedicate about a week to the issue of immigration, and we say, well, the reality is we are here because you were there, right? The United States, through the CIA and other resources, has controlled most of Latin America for the last century and continues to do that to a certain degree. And so I invite, and I've had these dialogues with faculty members from Santa Rosa Junior College who have sent me very personal emails that say that basically I don't know what I'm talking about. And so I invite those individuals as well to go and check out books at the library and then come back and have a dialogue with me. One of the greatest books on the issue of Latin America is Harvest of Empire, which I just now have decided I'm going to show it here on this campus and possibly in Petaluma in the next couple of weeks. Because I think it creates this dialogue, this healthy dialogue of knowing your history. Last night in my class, we were discussing ignorance and voluntary ignorance, and the fact that many of us choose to live voluntarily, even though the information is out there, we choose not to know. And so, individuals like ourselves going into the community, we're happy to engage with anybody as long as it is done in a very respectful manner so that we can continue the dialogue even at the end of that conversation and keep coming back. And that's really what we do, not just in the classroom for those of us who are really invested in creating a healthy community, but we do it here by creating other events. Student government, for example, Mujeres Chingonas, Mecha, we have put on dances like Latin dance or cumbia dance and all of this stuff. And what it does is it brings people to the table and people have fun, but it creates dialogue. And then people stop thinking that you must be undocumented because you're brown, right? It creates the community that we need to create. And so I invite other members of the community to do exactly the same within the communities wherever they live, to be able to create dialogue, be able to see each other as human beings, and as a result of that, advocate for each other. Because again, I go back to this idea, right? Today we are talking about undocumented immigrants. Tomorrow we may be talking about women and Roe versus Wade. And the week after that, we are talking about whether or not Trump is going to eliminate food stamps or anything else for low-income families. And so we have to be one. This is my new logo. We are one, and we need to continue with that.
Thank you. Good job.
So,
Karen?
if I might add just a bit to that, first of all, I endorse everything Rafael just said. I think those are excellent solutions. Bringing people together in a human setting is indispensable in building a common sense of humanity and likeness. I think also we need to do a better job of talking about racism not just as a personal problem of fear and ignorance of individuals, but also as a systemic, historical, deeply embedded form of violence. That there are reasons why the kinds of racism that we've experienced in our history continue to pop up. I gave the earlier example about my own family's immigration status and also the current problems faced by undocumented immigrants and Muslims today. These are all familiar. This story is a pattern that recurs over and over again, and it's part of the very fabric of our institutions and the way we organize our life in this society. It's obviously rooted in our earliest history with slavery, of course, and as you mentioned with Payne's comments earlier, the exclusive nature of that dialogue that led to the forming of the society. So once students or the community, anybody learns about these and comes to recognize the patterns, the systemic nature of the way that racial hatred and fear originates, it becomes much easier to recognize it in oneself and how to defend against it. I think equipping people with a more systemic understanding of how these things happen is very useful. You see similar things in smoking abatement programs. It's very difficult to get people to quit smoking by just telling them it's bad for them. But when you tell them the mechanisms through which advertisers and others convince them to smoke and the purposes of hooking them, they're much more able to recognize that they're being duped and such. I think there's a similar formula for racism. We really need to get to its systemic basis.
Nice, good. Okay, Karen?
Thank you, and I do agree with the comments made by my fellow colleagues. I also just want to turn to a little practical tip. I heard that the comment came from Petaluma. Student Services, again, members of this panel have done an excellent job of compiling important resources for students, and on it is actually a directory that talks about Our House Intercultural Center in Petaluma specifically. So in the event that the student from Petaluma can reach out to this particular group, it is on the Petaluma campus with a very qualified advisor, and I would really recommend that this is the kind of approach that students avail themselves to, get to advisors, get to faculty and other administrators who serve in this role, bring the topic forward and ask the question to say, these are the kinds of training, these are the kinds of crucial conversations we want to initiate. How do we get started on those? So there are people already designated in the district to facilitate and to really help with those discussions. So make yourself available to those individuals, please, as well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Karen. So Maria and Lorenzo both want to speak to this. So let's have Maria go first since she hasn't spoken yet, and then Lorenzo.
So one of the things that I learned from one of the many now classes that I've taken here at the Santa Rosa Junior College from an instructor is to call a thing. So I was an individual who liked to go around and be like, so this happened, and then it led to this, and then it led to that, but it didn't happen to me, it happened to someone else. But through empowerment and through support from certain individuals, I was able to be like, hey, yo, you know what you just said was racist. Or what you just said was sexist, or that actually hurt me, wow. But then you start having a dialogue with the individual that doesn't result in maybe separation, but where you're able to respect the views that each and every individual is coming from and learn that maybe what you said wasn't the right thing, and that doesn't mean that you're a horrible individual, it just means that you were conditioned in a certain way, and the other individual is letting you know that they may be being hurt or what you said was hurtful. And I just had a situation where someone called me something and I was like, hey, you know what, that's not cool. And they were like, it was just a common term. And then it took 3 days that I saw the individual again. They came back and they were like, I just realized what I said might have not been hurtful in my world, but in your world it is. So I apologize now, and I learned to respect to not continue to say that. So when we have empowerment and we have support from one another, to be able to respect our own identities and call a thing, don't be afraid to have those uncomfortable conversations that we're too often told not to have with each other. That's how we can learn and grow from each other.
Good. Thanks for that, Maria. Excellent. Lorenzo.
I just want to make a quick comment. Let's not forget that racism is a learned behavior. None of us are born racist. It's things that happen to us through our filters that create this racism, and it's ugly. It's sometimes generational, and it continues on and perpetuates. Now with the social or with the dilemma that's going on, it's exasperating fear and violence. And so I think an important thing to remember is to check in with yourself, because everybody needs to understand where they're coming from and how they see things through their lens. And as Maria said, somebody said something and they didn't realize it. It's because she approached them and said, hey, that's not cool. And that's right, it's not cool. And that gave them an opportunity to do some introspection and determine what they said was hurtful. And to then check themselves and say, maybe I need to look at this and broaden my mind and get to know people for who they are, not what they look like, what race they are. So I just think if you start with yourself, it's very important, and everybody in this room can make a change by just checking in with themselves. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Great question from Brenda in Petaluma. Thank you for that. So we're going to go to the mic now. Rebecca Hermosillo has a comment. Representing Mike Thompson and herself.
Thank you so much for having this town hall. What a great conversation. Working in the Congressman's office, we have the privilege to hear from everybody, whether it's opinions we agree with or not. And since the election, we've had an increase of racist, hateful comments that are hard to listen but it is still our job to take those comments and pass them on to the congressman. So oftentimes I get called at the office and they ask for the Mexican. And so it is just so normal for some people. And what happened last week was I was at the AT&T store last week, and right on Mendo, and there was a lady in front of me and didn't get what she wanted, and she referred to the person anti-Semitist names, and I wasn't at work and I could say something, and so I just said, your behavior is not acceptable. She eventually got kicked out, and the person that was helping her was visibly shaken, and he thanked me for stepping up. And so I think that it's important to stand up for people and wrongs that we see not only on campus but in our community to help stop the hate. So thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Jordan Carbajal. Jordan, student body president.
Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. Thank you everyone for being here. This question is more towards Rafael Vasquez. But I also want to talk about my experience. My great experience here at the JC is that I'm facing my last semester here. I come from a family of undocumented immigrants. We came here from Peru. And when I first enrolled to the JC, I saw that there was no support group for undocumented students, just like myself. And I felt like the JC was lacking. And then I thought to myself, we're stopping the success of students from graduating, from transferring, from going to their educational goal. And I remember the first day of the grand opening of the Dream Center. It was beautiful. When I first heard the news, I was really excited, and I thought it was going to be like a big place like UC Davis has, at AB 540 Undocumented Center, and a place where undocumented individuals and allies can come and dialogue, and study, have some homework, and look at the resources. Unfortunately, it wasn't that. It was just like a one-stop, how Rafael said it, and it's really small. It really crammed up in there. And my question for Rafael Vasquez, first of all, thank you for what you do for the community and for the students. But what do you think, what else does the Dream Center need, or any additional things inside should we, this is the JC input for the Dream Center for the success of undocumented students?
Thank you for the question. I fully agree with you that what Davis has, what UCLA has had probably for 10 years now with their center is exactly what we need. And what we need is a space that provides enough of a safe environment for individuals to have confidential conversations. We do DACA and DACA renewals, as I mentioned previously, and we cannot be doing this in public because these individuals have social security numbers. At a certain point, you are at risk of violating FERPA regulations, which is obviously the federal guidelines that we must abide by. And so we need a space where we can have a couple of offices in order to be able to do all this paperwork in confidence and be able to shred whatever other paperwork without fear that somebody may just take it. We also need, as we discussed, a space for individuals to be able to just go warm up their food, maybe take a moment, take a break, create community by doing their homework, or just interact with other students. And then we definitely need the space where a director is in charge of the space. In my perfect world, and I have expressed this to President Chung, so I think it's public enough for me to say this, but in the perfect world, we would have a director who runs the Petaluma Dream Center and the Santa Rosa Dream Center, 2 specialists who would be able to be in charge of the day-to-day responsibilities of both of the centers, and then 4 students in the Santa Rosa campus, 3 students in the Petaluma campus who would be trained on how to anything from taking phone calls to making appointments to filling out applications. And so we're talking about, taking a percentage of those $4 million that students bring by being at Santa Rosa Junior College and being able to use that funding to be able to take care of the needs of those same students and their families.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just quickly a comment from Petaluma, just reminding something that Karen has said repeatedly. Remind staff and students about services offered in English and Spanish at Student Psychological Services, and also our group to address issues, emotional issues relevant to Latinos, Latinas. And so again, referring to the list of resources on the back, including psychological resources and in Spanish as well as English, and here as well as in Petaluma. So here's a couple of questions. I'm just looking at the time and just know that we've got about 10, 11 minutes left, and we probably won't get to everybody's question or comment, unfortunately, but there's contact information so that you can follow up. I'm sure that you can send an email to Richard, Karen, or any of the panelists if your question doesn't get addressed. So here's a question for Sean Martin. What institutions, public or private, are most likely to have the political or police power to affect the actual conditions we all will live under in our immediate future?
So I'm not sure I'm the right person to respond to this question. I think my response would come down to this. I mean, I really don't think police power is the solution to most of these issues. I think people power is. And as a student of the history of nonviolent action, no authoritative source, no police force or political party or anything can carry out even the noblest ends without the support and participation of a broad segment of the population. And so it's really our responsibility, our power to carry out what needs to be done and to maintain peace and justice and our values ourselves. And in fact, I think turning to the police, and I suspect my colleague over here would agree, that's a last resort when things are broken down. That's when community and conversation and such is not functioning properly. And so that's the way I would respond to that.
Okay.
That was my question. May I follow up?
Okay, go ahead.
I really appreciate all of the talk today about resolutions and good intentions and the value of education. Thank you. Am I on? Okay. I would like to ask us to look at a broader perspective because it seems to me that we are rapidly coming up against it. We have a president who has threatened to withdraw funding from the state of California. That's a very serious threat. We have a legislature. I'm not sure what they are doing. I appreciate Mr. Thompson's efforts in the United States Congress and our own legislators from Sonoma County and Marin County. But my question really is, when push comes to shove, And it's not just one individual talking to another individual, but a matter of politics and power, political power, a reality in our world that we're seeing every day. What institutions, particularly governmental institutions, are most likely to be most effective in enabling all of us to carry out the excellent ideas and resolutions that we're talking about today? Thank you.
Does anybody on the panel want to answer that question?
Well, I mean, I think, obviously, working through the courts, there's already some concerted efforts to confront these. At the city council meeting yesterday afternoon, there was an attorney from San Francisco City who helped to describe many of the strategies that legal experts can take in deferring or opposing these threats, these actions. I think when it comes down to it, what we have to do is ask, how much do we really believe in our values, and what are we willing to sacrifice in that cause? Every mass movement of resistance that has been successful has adopted a strategy of broad participation where the buy-in is as wide as possible. And again, the political process is there to get rid of odious figures who want to undermine our aspirations. But aside from the ACLU's efforts and other fine institutions, both official and non-governmental, I think what it comes down to is us and our refusal to comply. All power, this is a fact, all power depends on compliance and obedience. And when people stop obeying rules, when people refuse to act, when people in the State Department or the Justice Department or these other arms of the administration just won't play a game, slow down their work, refuse to carry out orders that they believe are against their conscience or their duty, then autocrats can't get done what they want to get done. And that's, I think, where I would rest my confidence in people's refusal to act.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Okay, time for a couple more. This is from live feed from Facebook, and I'm going to direct this to Maria. Students may not always feel comfortable coming forward. Will any group, such as a student government assembly, be providing any kind of event to help dispel myths like Islamophobia and others? You want to speak to that?
Yes. So there are collaborative efforts, as I talked about collaboration on the first time I spoke, I believe, if I remember correctly, that we are collaborating with student equity and other departments there's a One Love event coming up, and it is next Wednesday, thank you. And this is a One Love event where a bunch of clubs are invited on campus, and a bunch of students, teachers, faculty, everyone, people from the community are invited, where there are going to be performances from different cultural groups as well as different cultural food. And this is a chance for students to get to know each other and different groups to get to know each other and have healthy conversations and dialogues and have a day where you kind of get to de-stress. And it's after the elections happened. And I think it's just a place where student government as well will be able to learn what they can do further beyond just creating these events that we have created, such as the dances that Rafael was talking about that SGI also collaborates with. The dances are a chance for people to physically go and de-stress, those that are able to. And it's also an opportunity for us to learn what we aren't doing yet and what we can do in the future, because we do not have all the answers. We as a student body, as a student government, do not function without the student opinion, just as this institution does not function without the students. So that said, I am excited to hear any efforts of collaboration that anyone has, not just students, but faculty and staff members that have been here prior than I have, and I know that have knowledge of things that have worked in the past and that might work now, or might just have any new ideas. So any students, faculty, or staff members that have any ideas about what might happen. We also being part of student government, also collaborate with the clubs such as Undocumented Student Union, Mujeres Chingonas. We are looking to collaborate with Black Student Union to screen a movie and other clubs. So anyone that is interested in creating anything, please let us know. We are the ones who advocate for the resources that we have available at our hands.
Okay, great. I'm going to we only have a couple minutes left. I'm going to combine 3 questions into one because they're close together. And the questions are about physical safe space, and if DACA is overturned, for example, people are worried and want to know about a physical sanctuary, and also there were a couple about the terms. Why safe haven instead of sanctuary? Does anybody want to speak to either of those?
I'll speak to the physical safe space. So I started in January 6, 2004 here at Santa Rosa Junior College, and at that moment we had absolutely no support for undocumented students. It was at that time that I collaborated with a couple of individuals on campus, and we created flyers to even be able to go tell students that in 2001 there was a law that allowed undocumented students to attend Santa Rosa Junior College and every community college and university in the state of California. I don't say that to take credit. I say that it has taken a long time for us to be able to even get to the point that we have a dream center. But in 2006, when the Sensenbrenner proposal of law was happening in Congress, where if you were an undocumented immigrant or if you were a US citizen, you couldn't even give a cup of water to an undocumented immigrant without facing a 5-year prison sentence. People came out and people came together, and back in those days, Marianne Michaels was my supervisor and the director of EOPS, and this building wasn't here, but we came up with a plan as to how physically we were going to provide information to all of our undocumented students and get them in a room should immigration ever come onto this place. And then we were going to surround the place by US citizens who literally wouldn't allow the immigration to get into the place. As a result of Trump taking the presidency of the United States, the EOPS office on the 2nd floor of Bertolini Hall has now been declared by me as the safe space for individuals who, in that situation, should that ever happen, that immigration comes onto campus, we will seal the office. We have enough, at least snack bars in the back for a couple of days, right? And then we did the exact same thing with the Intercultural Center in the Petaluma campus. And that space have now been secure so that if need be, somebody will lock the door, and then we have volunteers who said, I am going to come over and I will stand in between immigration or undocumented students. Right? So we have a lot of allies, and we will continue to do all these trainings in the community and on campus to make sure that people are aware of their rights and responsibilities. And so this is where I want to remind you that as well as we're doing Know Your Rights, and you just go to dream.santarosa.edu, and we're going to be posting on that website, all of the information. You can also go to DACA, Sonoma County, and I post information there daily about like the time that immigration came to Hillsburg on Sunday and all of those things. But specifically, Know Your Rights when dealing with the police is going to happen on the Santa Rosa campus on February 22nd from 3 until 4:30 p.m. And you can send me an email and we'll clarify the location. But for now, it's looking like it's going to be Emeritus Hall, 1588. But we'll have that information for sure. You just email me again in the back of that program. There is information on how to do that, how to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you, Raf. So we're now out of time. I'm going to thank you, our panelists. I'm going to invite Dr. Chong to come and say a final word to wrap us up.
I'd like to ask you to give the panelists a big round of applause. That was really, thank you. And I want to thank all of you in the audience for taking the time to come here today. I pledge as the president of this wonderful college that this is the beginning, not the end of dialogue and conversations. We're committed to protecting our students, protecting what's right. I also want to take this opportunity to introduce to you someone who's new to the college, who's going to be playing a role in working with the Dreamers. He's someone who is a child of immigrants himself, who grew up in Castroville, picking in the fields, and has gone on to Fresno State University and has gone on to a distinguished career in higher education. And now I welcome Pedro Avila as our new Vice President of Student Services. So thank you. So all those hard questions that the students asked, Pedro is going to give you the answer. But seriously, this is a very trying time in our country, but I'm really encouraged and inspired today by a lot of what I heard, because there's a lot of people who are committed to doing what's right, doing no harm, for social justice issues. This is what our community stands for, and we stand with you. So again, please keep apprised of the internet, social networking. We will keep you apprised of things that are happening, because everybody knows everything is so fragile and mobile right now. But thank you for coming again, and have a safe drive home, and thank you for the weather. Thank you.